Let me just say that you're a pussy. You! Oh, cry, is it too hard? It's too hard. The monster. Pussy. Raids in 14 are meticulously designed to be the most challenging content in the critically acclaimed MMORPG, and the game's lead battle designer tells us how it's done. Final Fantasy XIV is a game of many facets. I'll always remember it for its emotional storytelling and how its dungeons and bosses blend gameplay and narrative beautifully, all elevated by an evocative soundtrack. The lighthearted side content like the Manderville quest or the Gold Saucer add levity and embrace the silly side of MMORPG. And optional boss fights offer great side stories alongside hearty combat trials. But then there are Savage Raids, the toughest and most grueling content in the game, fine-tuned for the sickos who love a ridiculous challenge. Okay. First off, man, I'm gonna correct this guy right here. Savage Raids are not the toughest, okay? Now, I understand that this is an article and they're trying to sell it up, but Savage Raids are meant for mid-core players, and it's because of articles like this that people get intimidated by Savage Raiding. But I'm gonna tell you right now, the Savage Raids are for mid-core content. Now, are they difficult? Sure. But are they like the toughest and most grueling content in the game? No. Savage Raids take the normal raid bosses and turn up the difficulty and complexity of their gameplay mechanics to unforgiving levels. It's a sort of dance routine with very little room for error for all 8 party members, a combat puzzle where precise execution of specific strategies and quick reaction while maintaining your attack rotation are required. And failure means starting over from the beginning. However, being blessed with a smart and patient raid leader, I've been able to avoid the frustrations that come with raiding at this high of a level, and that's helped me appreciate the nuances of Savage Raiding. With a much deeper understanding of 14 from a technical perspective, I was able to speak with 14's lead battle content designer, Masaki Nakagawa. Okay, so dude, look, I'm just calling him Mr. Ozma, better known as Mr. Ozma in the 14 community. Look, man, I ain't trying to mispronounce somebody's name, man. I'm sorry. All right, look, I'm NA. If the name isn't Chuck, Dick, John, or like Bob, then I can't fucking pronounce it, man. I'm sorry, okay? Blame on NA. About how raids get made. We talk about everything from the development timeline for squeezing the content into a strict release schedule to staying creative and reasonably challenged over a decade worth of raid tiers. We also covered the intricacies of working within the confines of a game's limitations. Okay, I'm interested to see what those game limitations are. How the teams made the trickiest raid boss yet in patch 6.4. Trickiest raid boss. Okay. And the influence of player feedback. Okay, that's probably just like spice, it's probably just, some clickbait shit. Anyway, the insights are fascinating for those who've touched raids in 14, but even if you haven't, the deep dive into 14's design paints a much more complex picture for one of the many pillars that make the critically acclaimed MMORPG a special experience. Gamespot. What does the development timeline look like when you have to design a raid boss? For example, when do you start creating them for upcoming patches? When do testers get their hands on them? And how much time do you get for adjustments between normal and savage versions? The early stages of developing a raid involve tasks such as deciding the design concept, as well as creating artwork for the boss and scenery. The timeline for these tasks vary depending on the situation, but it typically starts about 6 months to a year before release. Since 8-player raids are usually released during even-numbered patches, it's safe to say that when the raid is released, we're most likely already working on the next raid tier. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. As for playtesting, we adjust both the normal and savage versions in tandem, rather than wait until the normal version is complete. This is because changing something in savage might affect the normal version, and vice versa. I wish he would have given an example on that. After the content is built, we have about 4 to 8 weeks to repeatedly test and tweak to make further improvements. Okay. So they have about 4 to 8 weeks, so a month to 2 months. Okay, so they've been pretty good about it so far. There's only been a few fuck ups here and there. I mean, they've been pretty good. Like, we don't want to talk about the we don't talk about the Abyssos incident. This expansion's raids haven't been the best, actually. They've been kind of bad. There have been some good ones, like the door boss in 12 is pretty good. P10 is one of the best second turns, if not the best ever made. P1 is also pretty decent too. So this raid tier overall is pretty good. I do not like the final boss at all. I think it's fucking garbage. One of the worst final bosses in like the history of the game. I think it's awful. And I'm not really a fan of Thancred or whatever the fuck his name is. However, in the second raid tier, the first fight was amazing. Ruby Carbuncle was super good. P6 was a joke. P7 was a joke. P8 door boss was pretty good. And the final boss was like, it was good, but not as good as the door boss, I don't think. The first turn was extremely mid. Second turn, the design of the boss and the mechanics I thought were good, but the fight overall was like good. The thing that made the second turn super good was the arena. I think that it was a very interesting arena. The third turn was a fucking banger. Phoenix was awesome, but I think it was awesome because it was so hard for a party finder. P4 was extremely forgettable. Very mid. So overall, if you compare these raids to last expansion raids, these raids are significantly worse. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Let's see. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in high-level raid design for expansions and patches through the years in terms of balancing difficulty, player enjoyment, and creative ideas? I've been a part of 14's battle content development for over 10 years, and I've honestly learned a lot. Okay, so this is probably why that the raids in 14 are so amazing, is because of this guy. There's also a lot I've gleaned from our players through the feedback and live streams, which I'm truly grateful for. When we look back on our first high-end raids, the Coils of Bahamut, compared with the latest raids, there are many aspects where we would have improved. I mean, yeah, this is true. The raids back in the day were just completely different, man. It was just a completely different time. That includes making adjustments to difficulty, taking mitigation and damage buff timing into consideration. Okay, yeah, it's because they were new. Balancing melee attack range, game design aspects like time limits and hints for mechanics, creating lore or scenario-based depictions in an encounter, our specifications for phase changes and loops, and so much more. There's so much to cover that I could spend an entire day talking about them. Well, let's look at some of the stuff that he said here. Making adjustments to difficulty, okay. Back in the day, the mechanics, for a vast majority of fights, the mechanics were a lot easier than what they are today. Some of the difficulty came from the actual job itself and DPS checks. So, like, I'll give you an example. Now, pretty much every job is relatively brain dead. It's not really that hard. And if you fuck up, it's not like your entire rotation is ruined. I mean, I joke about it sometimes, but if you look at it from back in the day, we'll compare Dark Knight. So Dark Knight now, you literally can't fuck up as long as you just hit your buttons. You cannot fuck up. It's impossible. It doesn't even matter if you get all your shit under raid buffs. It doesn't matter as long as you hit your buttons and don't cap. But the thing is now is that it's actually hard to not get all of your shit under raid buffs because everything is already synced up for you anyway. So that's why I say that, like, even if you don't get all your attacks in under raid buffs, it doesn't matter because you naturally will get a majority of them. If every person in the group, and this is like not speaking from like a speed perspective or an optimized setting or even a high-end player. If you're just a mid-core player and you hit your buttons on cooldown, everything will naturally line up and you will get a majority of attacks in the raid buffs, okay? So basically, the way that the fights are now, the difficulty doesn't come from actually hitting your rotation. It doesn't actually come from hitting your buttons because that's the easy part. The difficulty comes from like 8-man punishment, 8-man mechanics, 8-man jump rope, that type of stuff. So do I agree with that? I actually do not. I do not agree with that. I think that the rotation should be a factor in difficulty, and I think that DPS should be a factor in difficulty. Albeit not a huge factor, but it should be a factor. It should be a factor more than what it is now. Going back to my Dark Knight example, back in the day, you could lose Dark Side. Now, a lot of you don't even know what Dark Side is. Dark Side is the buff that you get when you use Edge of Shadow, okay? Once you apply that buff, you cannot lose it. You can't, unless you let it time out, but that means you're not hitting your buttons. So you cannot lose it. Back in the day, though, it was a tricky balance of DPS and managing your mana, because now you can just fucking blow your load with no consequences, okay? It's like you got a vasectomy and you're just fucking blowing your load and everything, you know what I mean? Whereas back in the day, you didn't have that. You had to be careful. Okay, you had to be real careful back in the day. It was a nice balance of not getting too excited, not blowing your whole load. You have to save for Dark Side. You have to save for your stamina. You know what I'm saying? That's how it was. But now it doesn't matter. So adjustments to difficulty. My favorite expansion was Stormblood because I felt that the difficulty and job design was almost perfect. It was almost perfect. It was as good as it's ever been, in my opinion. Shadowbringers was also super good as well, but my favorite was Stormblood. It had the best raids, some of the best job design. It was awesome. Part of that difficulty came from the job. I hope that they go back to that, but I don't think they're going to. Taking mitigation and damage buff timing into consideration. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this one now for a second. Back in the day, because they mentioned Coils of Bahamut, let me tell you something. Holy fucking shit. Twin Tania was the hardest hitting boss that this fucking game has ever seen, man. You had death sentence every 30 seconds. Now back in the day, you didn't have the tools that you have now. Twin Tania hit really fucking hard. Like, she would do death sentence every 30 seconds. I remember having a fucking macro for death sentence. When she used death sentence, okay, because this was before ACT triggers and all this cheating shit, all the trigonometry and all that crap, okay? This was in the Stone Age, the Dark Ages, okay? You didn't have all the tools you do now. You don't have the simulator. You don't have all that shit. So I had to hit a macro, man, because I played Warrior back in the day. And for those of you that don't know, whenever you used Inner Beast, it gave you 20% mitigation for 6 seconds. So you had to time it to where you hit your Inner Beast like around 3 seconds before she casted it or during the cast. So it was hard, man. If you didn't hit that Inner Beast, you were fucking dead. But they don't have that now, you know, because the tools you had back then were significantly worse than the tools you have now. Now tanks are way too strong and healers are way too powerful. Tanks are so powerful, you don't even need healers to clear the content. So for all you healers in chat that are like, oh, the game's too hard, bitch won't even need your ass, man. You're just here because we allow you to be here. Warrior doesn't even need healing. Warrior is the healer. Paladin can heal. Fuck, man, even Gunbreaker can heal. Dark Knights can now heal their living dead. We don't need you anymore. Tanks are way too strong now. Balancing melee attack range. This one I actually disagree with. If balancing melee attack range means giving every hitbox the size of the earth, then I don't want that. This was another difficulty that people don't think about. It's keeping melee uptime. That should be a part of strategy. But because they keep making the game so much easier, they're basically giving every fight full uptime. There is no strategy based in gaining GCDs anymore, which I'm not a fan of. One of my favorite fights in the game is E4 Titan, and trying to keep full uptime on the car is one of the most funnest things I've ever done in this game. I love that shit. Or trying to keep full uptime during Light Rampant. That was the best fucking shit, man. So I wish that they would bring back some responsibility for melee players and groups to try to get melee uptime. Game design aspects, the time limits, and hints for mechanics. I think this is cool. I really enjoy it when they do this shit in the game. So here's a puzzle that I've never liked, and it's the True Heart in T. It doesn't tell you shit. You just have to do it, right? It's kind of annoying, and it happens so late. I think that they could have made that better. There may have been a hint here and there that I'm not remembering, but it's not about if it was there or not. It's about how good it was. Okay, so let's pretend that there was a hint, you know, that you have to do the True Heart. The hint that they gave was fucking awful if it was even there. Like, I can't even remember if it was there or not. That was bad design in my opinion. A good design is the horse font. Save him. You save the boy. That was awesome. That was so fucking cool. Because in the lore, he dies to the spear. But they kept giving us hints, like an alternate timeline, like a what-if situation. Like, they made it very obvious that for the first part of the fight, he's supposed to die. But then you go back, and there's something you can change. Like, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, man. I'm not even kidding. It was so good. I also really wasn't a fan of the Phoenix buff at the end of P8. I thought that was like kind of fucking annoying too. I thought it was kind of obscure. So the fact that they think about game design aspects and hints for mechanics, that's really good. One thing that I do wish they would change, because they mentioned time limit here, and this just got me thinking about it, is the time limit on the duty finder. The time limit should never kick you out mid-fight. So let's say you do a pull at 1 minute. You should be able to do that pull, even if the timer says 0, you should be able to do that pull until you wipe, and then it kicks you out. Don't get me wrong, there's always funny clips of something happening at the very last second. But if you put yourself in that situation and you need that clear and that happens to you, that's not fun, because you've essentially wasted all of that time for nothing. Like, other people are going to laugh because, yeah, it is funny because it happened to you, not me. Loser! Happened to you! Loser POV. Don't get me wrong, I understand that it's hilarious, but I feel like that if it happened to me, I would absolutely hate it. And there's another thing too, right? Let's say you're progging DSR and you have like 15 minutes on the timer, and it's like, well, fuck, we can't even go for the clear. So then you have to leave and then come back and do the door boss. It's really obnoxious. So one thing that I think that they need to change is when that duty timer runs to 0, it should continue and not kick you out until you wipe. That's what it should do. Because I feel like kicking you out mid-fight, that's not cool. I actually like the duty timer. I do. I think it's cool that there's a duty timer because, because after a lockout, you need to get up and stretch. You know what I mean? It's a perfect excuse to use the bathroom real quick. Just get up, move around for a second. I like it. Creating lore or scenario-based depictions in an encounter. Okay, I really like this. I mean, I kind of already talked about it earlier, but you know, like DSR, that's really cool. Our specifications for phase changes and loops. Okay, I wish he would have given an example on this and so much more. There's so much to cover that I could spend an entire day talking about them. A specific example would be how simple mechanics with heavy emphasis on reaction time, okay, are used very differently from mechanics requiring several decisions at once with lenient time to react. Okay. Mechanics with heavy emphasis on reaction time may make some players feel like they're not making progress no matter how much they practice, whereas other players might pick it up right away, which bears resemblance to action games. Okay, so a good example of this I can think is Party Synergy. You have to do the conga line, you have to line up, you have to figure out which side you're on, you have to figure out if it's close or far. So you got to be fast about that, okay? Some people pick up that. And you also have to locate the safe zone. Now, I know that's an ultimate mechanic, so it's supposed to be hard, but you know, I'm just using it as an example. Whereas some people pick it up earlier than others. It's good that they think about this shit, right? Okay, imagine having to do caloric in 2 seconds. Ain't no way, bro. Ain't no way, bro. But with a mechanic that requires multiple decisions at once, if players are given plenty of time to think about them, with practice, they'll feel like they're getting further, and the majority will eventually learn how to solve the mechanic perfectly. Currently, high-end raids in 14 are built around mechanics which fall under the latter category. Yeah, okay. That said, that doesn't mean we completely avoid mechanics that emphasize reaction time. We incorporate them in moderation to strike a balance. Yeah, you can tell that they do that. There's a continual need for new MMORPG battle content that surprises our players and keep them from getting bored. However, creating something new always involves risks and lots of development resources. Conversely, battle content with your typical mechanics have an advantage of providing a stable level of entertainment with little risk and cost. When I lead my team, I provide direction based on maintaining the overall balance between fresh and typical content. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. This is why this guy's a fucking maniac, dude. He's a genius. For example, in Pandemonium and Abasios, the 9th and 11th circles were built around familiar mechanics. So the 9th being limit cut, okay, and the 11th being a copy paste of Thancred. Okay, we're built around familiar mechanics while we challenged ourselves to introduce new ideas in the 12th and the 10th and 12th. I believe we gain the sense of balance from all we've learned during our many years of operations, as well as various feedback we receive from our players. What are some raid mechanics you wanted to do but couldn't because of design limitations, either from a technical game engine perspective or having to adhere to things like arena shape, 2-minute burst window, downtime? The development team always creates battle content under numerous limitations, and the number of ideas we've waived might rival the number of stars in the sky. To give us a specific example, dynamically moving the arena is an idea that was raised multiple times by different battle content designers. There were ideas that you might see in action games, such as swinging the floor back and forth like a pendulum, fighting on the back of a flying dragon, or battling atop 2 moving ships. These sort of ideas involve dynamic movements of collision would normally be unfeasible under 14 systems. Okay, yes, that makes perfect sense. But we cleverly worked with our given limitations to create arenas like a Leviathan's rocking boat, Diamond Weapon's dual flying platform, and Bayergot's hammering the floor into shape. The 120-second burst window and the limitations of player uptime on bosses are aspect where we received lots of player feedback and have undergone lots of trial and error. So I want everybody to let this sink in. We are the reason for the 2-minute window. You got what you wanted. This is what you wanted. This is what you wanted. Everybody always says that I cry and moan and I bitch and I ruin things. What thing have I ruined? Nothing. You know what you motherfuckers ruined? This shit. Who the fuck wanted a 2-minute window on every single fucking job? Who the fuck's idea was that? Maybe next time you should shut the fuck up and let the bald man talk, okay? Maybe next time, shut the fuck up. We tend to run into issues with encounters that temporarily prevent players from targeting the boss, so we've significantly reduced the frequency of boss becoming untargetable. Okay, so this is good. This is good. I do like this. I think that if you have the boss become untargetable too much, it becomes really, really awful. Not just because it throws raid buffs off, but also I am not a fan of just doing a mechanic. I enjoy mechanics where you also have to DPS. So furthermore, we've reduced the frequency of what our team calls sports meets phases, okay, where the boss becomes untargetable while players run around the arena to resolve mechanics. Okay, that's good. That's good. We receive lots of feedback regarding them, primarily from our players outside of Japan.
Oh, that might be innate.
See, look, this is a perfect example of what the NA greed can provide for the community. The NA greed, okay? We have given you no more sports meets phases. So you know what? The next time you see an NA player, thank them. Thank you, NA. Throw a hell yeah, brother. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light? Yeah, that's right. Freedom brought you that, okay? You know what you pussies brought the game?
A 2-minute window. Oh, God.
But my buffs, they won't play themselves. That's what you pussies brought, okay? Us over here in Freedom Land, we got rid of sports meets phases. Let that sink in. I have the impression that more players enjoyed resolving mechanics while attacking the boss. Absolutely. And I feel the same when I play the raids myself. Holy fucking shit, yes. So a lot of bosses are designed for maintaining uptime nowadays. Hell yeah, brother. That's the greed god. Okay, that's the greed god. Mr. Ozma, he's a greed god. You know, I could tell. Listen to this sentence. So a lot of bosses are designed for maintaining uptime nowadays. That's the greed god. However, look, man, there's a give and take. There's a give and take, okay? You have to make the uptime accessible. You can't just give us the uptime, okay? It's the chase. It's the chase. It's the adrenaline, you know? We want to find the uptime. We don't want to get the uptime, you know? That said, certain mechanics can be expressed through these sports meets phases, so I like to keep an eye on striking a good balance to incorporate both designs. Okay, man, this Mr. Ozma guy knows what the fuck he's talking about, man. This guy's the reason why 14 raids are so good. Some consider P10 the toughest instance in the Pandemonium series, and it's quite different from the rest of the raids. What was your approach to getting creative with it? For the 10th circle, our goal was to create something that would vividly remain in the minds of all players. Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%, 10 out of 10. A big reason for that was because the namesake of the raid series, Pandemonium, was going to appear as a boss. It should have been the third boss, not the fucking second, but whatever. To achieve our goal, we took a two-pronged approach. First, we had an idea to incorporate spider web-like mechanics. I felt that by doing so, we already had grounds to create unconventional mechanics from our initial design stage. The second concept was to make the encounter more challenging than the previous second-turn raids to give our players a strong sense of accomplishment. I wanted to design a powerful encounter befitting of the name Pandemonium. Okay, well, they surely fucking did that because this was the hardest second turn that's ever been made. This turn is harder than most turn 3s, and is just as hard as some turn 4s, in my opinion. I think that P10 is harder than Hesperos. Do this in the Party Finder and do Hesperos in the Party Finder. This is so much fucking harder, man. After its release, I saw many of our players on social media and live streams comment that it was their favorite second turn boss. I did. I commented. I said that. We made a tier list about it. I even saw some people praising it as a masterpiece. Yes, I said that. I said that it was a masterpiece, and I still stand by that today. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best fights they've ever made, and I think it's the best turn 2 they've ever made. In their videos and blog articles, which made me truly happy. On the flip side, others hated how it was harder than any other second turn raid. Let me just say that you're a pussy. That you're a fucking pussy. You! Oh, crying, is it too hard? It's too hard. The bond's through. Pussy. That's bitch mode. It's the second turn. It's bitch mode. Okay, get your shit together. Learn how to do some bonds. Learn how to do some spider webs. Okay? Learn that shit. No. This turn is way too hard for a second turn. It is. No, it's way too hard for a second turn. There's no reason this turn should be this hard. If this was the third turn, maybe. The fourth turn, definitely. But the second turn, this is the second turn. This is supposed to be on the same level as whatever P6 is. What's that fucking boss's name? That ridiculously forgettable fucking boss? They're supposed to be around the same difficulty. Yeah, Hegemone. While I believe that in many ways we achieved the goals we set when we started working on the tier, the resulting difficulty was a bit harder than we anticipated. Okay, so here's where I mean this in the utmost respect. I am not trying to shit on the dev team at all. I think that they do a wonderful, amazing job, 10 out of 10, a vast majority of the time. However, occasionally, they will have these instances where something is extremely obvious and they don't catch it. Whoever the fuck is testing these fights, they need new opinions. They need fresh ideas. They need a few more people that actually play this game all the time. Because how in the fuck did they not catch the DPS problem in P8? And how the fuck did they not catch the difficulty spike of P10? Who the fuck is testing this shit? We certainly set out to make this second turn more challenging than previous ones. But considering the players attempting the raid with strangers in Party Finder, the damage of harrowing hell, oh my god, it's like, dude, it's like I said this on day one. It's like I literally said all this on day one, and everybody said I was a fucking idiot. Nobody believes Ames. Nobody believed the bald idiot. He's just talking again. Blah, 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 blah. There's one thing that I like more than being bald, and that's when I'm proven right. The damage of Harrowing Hell, one of the boss's late-stage attacks, was a bit too harsh. The development team's estimation for Harrowing Hell did not use Tank LB3. But the damage was too high and it became the norm for parties to use Tank LB3 there, which prevented them from using Healer LB3 to recover from later mistakes. Absolutely 100% true. If you don't use Tank LB3 for Harrowing Hell, your chance of survival in the Party Finder is virtually zero. I believe this was one of the biggest reasons why the 10th Circle Savage felt too difficult. I would be interested in to hear his other reasons. I think that there was another reason equally as challenging, and it was all of the body checks. There are way too many body checks in this fight. The encounter had both great points as well as room for improvement, but of all the raids I've worked on, I felt we succeeded and created something quite interesting. I will be reflecting on the areas that I can improve to leverage them in the next opportunity and create even more interesting bosses in the future. This guy, Mr. Ozma, seems like such a fucking badass, man. He seems so fucking cool. Just the fact that his mentality is always to be improving, always try new things, always to improve. That's really, really awesome, man. And that's why he's so good. That's why the raids in 14 are so amazing, is because of this mentality. What's your favorite thing about watching the community take on new Savage raids when they come out? And have you been surprised by strategies that you didn't think of? After the raids are released, I like watching live stream of players enjoying themselves and figuring out their way to clear. Our players are amazingly skilled, and I'm always surprised at how quickly they figure out mechanics and get through encounters. It's especially interesting to see videos of players who restrict themselves even further, despite how difficult high-end content can already be. It's always a surprise to see players find clever ways to clear with different party compositions, like having only one healer, all tanks, or only 7 players. Having designed so many high-level bosses, what can we expect in the future to keep challenging us in new ways? I'd like to thank everyone who enjoys 14 high-end raids. In Endwalker, we released the 3 raid tiers of Pandemonium and 2 ultimate fights, Dragon Song's Reprise, and the Omega Protocol. And we received so many comments from our players via social media. And I've also had the pleasure of watching many of you stream your raid progress in real time. There's been several times where I succeeded and other times where I fell short, but all of you have taught me so much with each experience. I'll continue giving my all to deliver the feelings of excitement and achievement that can only be experienced through high-end raids. So I hope you'll be looking forward to more raids to come. That was good. That was good. How do you think he felt when he saw the no healer top? I mean, he literally said how he felt. It's always a surprise to see players find clever ways to clear a different party composition, like having only one healer, all tanks, or only 7 players. I mean, he likes it. He likes the fact that people enjoy the content and try new things. What is a body check in 14? That's not a stupid question, man. That's not a stupid question. I'm sure there's other people in here that have no idea what the fuck that means. A body check is basically a check that requires all 8 members or you fail. Like, you cannot carry somebody through. That's what a body check is. Each raid member gets a very specific responsibility. Like 8 towers is a body check. Like everything in P10. When Mr. Ozma watched your clip of you calling P10 a masterpiece, do you think he went, damn, this guy's head kind of looks like a tit? No. I think that when he watched the clip, he saw this fucking idiot, Roberto, said something stupid and the fucking streamer banned him and he probably said, wow, that chatter is really dumb. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, this was really cool, man. The questions asked were also very good. Very good article.